Hey Kids Cook Real Food, Mrs. Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector, where, as always, we are here to connect parents who really want to raise healthy kids with the experts who have the information they need. Today, joining me is Mareya Ibrahim. She is a best-selling author, and she's known as the Fit Foodie, a nationally recognized food safety and clean eating expert. And I most of all love that she's a chef. That's kind of where she started. And so today we're going to talk about just cooking and eating healthy in your home and in your family, and how to really make it doable, which is so up my alley. Thanks for being here, Mareya.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's talk about your book is called Eat Like You Give a Fork, The Real Dish on Eating to Thrive. And so you get into, a lot of nutrition, but also I like that you kind of are motivated to make it doable. And also you guys, Mareya worked on the Daniel Plan with Dr. Daniel Amen. And I know that a lot of you probably have heard of the Daniel Plan or have maybe tried it in your churches. So it's so cool. So cool to be
Thank
interviewing
you.
the author here.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, doable is very important because you can create all kinds of complicated steps and hard to find ingredients and leave the end user a lot more frustrated. So I think focusing on seasonality, what you can find in your local community, and focusing on fresh is always the best way to go.
Yeah. What brought you to healthy eating? Was this like from childhood? Were you a healthy eater, or was there like a moment?
I think I started there and then just sort of veered off during my teen years, which a lot of people do. I'm Egyptian and I was born in Egypt, and my family was always going to the market. That's just kind of what we did. Every day was an adventure to the farmer's market, our farmer's market, and we'd go buy eggs from the egg guy, and we'd buy produce from the produce guy, and we'd buy cheese from the cheese guy. Like, different people sold different things. And that was a big part of our day. And so fresh was everything. And then when we immigrated to the United States and we found ourselves in grocery stores, it looked a lot different. Everything was really, the focus was on the shelf. And so I definitely saw my health suffer. I went through a period of time where I struggled with an eating disorder. And what ended up saving me was going back to what I knew in my roots, was focusing on fresh, eating a lot of produce. What if it was in the perimeter of the store, that's really where I focused, but not just being compulsive, just enjoying food, savoring it, understanding the flavors, taking pride in cooking in my kitchen. And that's really what healed me.
Yeah, you have some strong words about diets. I know that you say no one should do anything that starts with die.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's too depriving. So how do you tell people, okay, I want to get healthier, but where do I start if I don't want to choose a diet?
Yeah, I think it's really it's a shift in a mindset. I think diet comes with this idea of deprivation, that it's all about calorie counting, that there are good and bad foods. There's a stigma around choosing certain things. And I even hear it in my community of people who follow me who are like, wait, Mareya, isn't that bad? And I'm like, listen, let's first of all change our vocabulary a little bit. It's not about wearing a badge of martyrdom because you've decided to cut out a food group. It's about knowing what to do to make your body strong and healthy and fight disease. And that's your priority. Yeah. What you do every, once in a while is human. And I call it the 90-10 rule. So if 90% of the time you're filling up on the food that is not only beautiful and delicious, but healthy and healing, like fresh produce, especially the non-starchy kind, like single ingredient super food grains that I focus on in the book, like good plant-based fats, like, hydration and giving your body a rest by doing intermittent fasting a couple of days a week. There's an approach that helps you balance and actually crave what's better for you. And then if 10% of the time you're indulging a little bit, guess what? you've already changed your metabolic structure. You've already changed how you process food and information. And so you end up eating less of that thing. I still eat ice cream every once in a while, but I want the good stuff. I don't want the diet, you know, artificial sugar stuff. I want the good stuff, but I will end up eating like 3 bites of it because that's about all my body can take. But I'm not going to deprive myself of that. And I don't think anybody needs to. I think it's very human to eat mom's apple pie and a birthday cupcake at a party without feeling like, oh, I can't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we don't want to teach our kids to be super restrictive too, because I always think when we do that, when we like hyper restrict children or really any group, it's kind of like a rubber band pulling back. And the more restrictive you are, the farther they're going to fly as soon as they get, you know, their own life, like in college, or a teenager gets a car or something, like shoo, right to the, you know, all the foods maybe we don't want them to eat.
Yeah.
I know in my audience, greens are often an issue. Green foods, leafy greens, like those are tough for kids. So what do you say about greens being your friend? I love that.
Yeah. It's one of the most important philosophies in the book. And, you know, we start with a taste bud reset. So curbing the cravings of sugar and salt means strengthening the other taste buds in your mouth. Umami, sour, bitter. And that taste bud reset is in the first section of the book.
Okay.
So it's one bite at a time, Katie. You know that so well, I'm sure. It's not just all at once we're going to start filling up on greens immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can take 5 bites of something, you know, maybe you start with 1 and you build up to 5. Then all of a sudden you start to change your palate. I used to hate avocado and spinach when I was younger. I thought it was disgusting.
Funny.
But it was a mouthfeel thing. So if it starts to be a mouthfeel thing, a texture thing, which kids usually have strong aversions to, you can blend it. You can add it into a smoothie. You can add it into a soup, into a sauce. And what they start to do is they start to recognize it, but not in an offensive way. It's just subtle. And it doesn't mean the food turns green. You know, you can add some spinach or kale to a smoothie with a lot of berries and still have it be nice and purple. So that's a nice way to get around that. But I don't want people to feel like they always have to hide it. I think it starts with us talking about produce and foods that are good for us in a way that is supportive. Like, look at how strong this is going to make you feel, you know, maybe comparing it to what athletes eat, or, you know, somebody else that your child looks up to. I know for me, it was always Popeye, you know, Popeye ate his spinach, and make it so that it's more of a good thing versus like, oh, you know, if you don't eat your broccoli, you don't get dessert. Like, that's where things go awry.
Yeah. And I hear 3 really actionable strategies there. I love the idea of retraining your taste buds. So there's kind of the 5 senses of taste. Sweet and salty are generally get a little more, you know, face time in American culture. So to focus on just adding into your diet sour, umami, and bitter.
Yeah.
Bitter is a tough one for kids. So yeah. And then I like that you say, like, focus on texture. If it is a texture problem, change the texture. But yet number 3 is don't hide it all the time. Focus on the positive and talk to your kids about what they are eating and what will make them feel good. That's so cool. I know meal planning is a big focus for you too.
Yep.
So what's like your first primary tip, like best first step into making meal planning effective?
I think having a plan, you know, number 1 is have a plan. And in the book, we give a sample meal plan. I have a whole program called the Meal Prep Club too, that people can opt into. And it's, you know, going into it with a plan, not only number 1 will help you organize what your meals are going to be, so you don't feel like you're doing mental gymnastics every week trying to figure out what you're going to make. But number 2, it saves you a lot of money. I think we end up going to the store and aimlessly walking around and buying things that we don't necessarily need because we're catering to a hunger or something that looks good. But if we go in with a plan, we buy what serves us and we stay on budget. And then number 3, mealtime doesn't take as long. I think when you meal prep, you know, and I think people have different ideas of what meal prep is. If you're a family of 5, I don't expect you to put everything into little neat containers. That's a lot of work. But if you have your produce washed, if you have a couple of different proteins cooked off, if you've got a couple of grains cooked off, and then avocado, nuts, flax, things like that lying around, pulling all of that together is going to be really, really easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of mental blocks sometimes if you walk into the kitchen and you must make dinner right now and you're not exactly sure what you're going to make, or you're not exactly sure where things are. Like, yeah, getting those two out of the way, huge, huge, huge.
Yeah, and meal prep for me, when we created our plan, we use those ingredients throughout the week. So nothing more frustrating than buying like, a fresh herb and using like 2 teaspoons of it. And then what do you do with the
Yeah,
rest?
exactly.
So part of what we're doing with meal prep is using the whole product. Food waste is a huge hot button for me. It has been since I got started in the food industry
Mm-hmm.
25 years ago. So I think it's really important that when we approach food, we think about what can we do to use the whole product. I even use banana peels in my smoothies. So I
What?
teach people how to like avoid waste completely. Oh yeah.
That's so
We've
crazy.
got,
I've never done that.
yeah, you can just let it go really ripe and it'll get nice and sweet. And I cut the bananas in half and leave the whole peel on, and people never know the difference, but most of the nutrient density is in the peel.
No way. No way. Is
So,
that what you're talking about? I mean, I've seen one of your sort of 8 tenets or strategies is become real dense.
mhm,
Is that what you're
yeah,
talking about? Like just learning
yeah.
about nutrients?
Yeah, and becoming real dense is about nutrient density and prioritizing
Mhm.
what goes into a bite. So there are different add-ons that we can put into food, whether it's foods that boost our immunity, foods that help to lower inflammation, turmeric, cinnamon,
Mhm.
flax, hemp, chia, unsweetened shredded coconut, all of those foods that really up the ante on giving us not only delicious flavor, but help heal our bodies.
Nice.
And it's easy to change a dish when you have that arsenal behind you. And
Yeah.
I keep everything in little containers in my kitchen, so I can just grab and like oatmeal is a oatmeal bar with 5, 6 different ingredients to pick from. So I think that also helps you never get bored. And yeah, the banana peels are a big part of that. What can you do to take a peel or the skin? A lot of the times people peel things. Don't peel them. That's where all the nutrient density is. Just wash it the right way. And that's why we created Eat Cleaner, so you could cleanse your produce, but then eat it all.
Nice. Well, and yeah, I love it. You kind of gave us some building blocks, like you were talking about meal planning, get a plan, get kind of the basic building blocks in your fridge, produce washed, some meat cooked, some grains cooked. And then like what you just talked about, I feel like that's sort of the top of the pyramid. Like you don't meal plan around shredded coconut or turmeric. Those are the things that you add on top. And when you know a little bit about how cooking and how flavors come together, you can be creative in that way, which is totally what we try to like encourage our kids to do here. Do you have
Yeah.
any tips for kids about like using their creativity in the kitchen in productive ways?
Oh yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is cook with kids. And really the last 10 years that I've been focused on this, I've raised 2 kids in the kitchen. And I remember putting my daughter on a little step stool at 2.5 years old and having her press the on button on the blender.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of pride that kids can take in being part of the kitchen. And I know for your audience, it can, it's so important, but at the same time, I know that people can probably feel like, well, that's a lot of work and that's a lot to like organize. But if you get them involved in mixing, if you get them involved in helping you wash the produce, you can do that. At a certain age, they can start to handle a little peeler. I use the peeler to make ribbons, veggie ribbons. And some people have spiralizers. You can make veggie ribbons to add into your salad. They can start to do that at a certain age.
Yeah, and that's a
They
super creative and texture way. You can switch up the texture with a ribbon versus a chunk. Totally changes the ball game on what kids want to eat.
Yeah, I bought my daughter a little, she loves to use the little apple press.
Oh yeah.
I'd have her cut up apples for us to put into a salad, like things that are age appropriate in terms of safety. And then when she got to a certain age, I felt very comfortable handing her a knife, helping her with good knife skills, helping her with chopping. She loves to bake. I can give her a recipe and she'll do it A to Z. So, you know, even my son, who has a lot of texture aversion and is what I would consider a very picky eater, loves to cook because he
Aw.
can then control the process.
Mhm.
So if you've got picky eaters, even more so to get them involved so that they can start to overcome some of that and control the process themselves. He can
Yeah,
cook a
we talk
great
about
steak.
that. Yeah, we talk about that a lot here. I know one concern that a lot of parents have, especially if they do have like a creative risk-taking child, they're like, I would love to let my kid sort of make something up, but then we end up wasting food because it's so terrible. So do you have any like really practical tips for boundaries? Like if you're working with maybe a 10-year-old kid who has experience in the kitchen and they want to create their own stuff,
Yeah.
how do you do that so that it tastes good at the end?
Yeah, I would give them a few, like a stable of ingredients that you
Mhm.
know you kind of can't go wrong with. You know, if you're putting together a salad, maybe it's not a conventional salad. Maybe there's some different ingredients that they can work with, adding fruit to it, you know, adding some of these superfood add-ons that I'm talking about, and just give them a chance to be creative with a palette, almost like you would if you were to sit down and do an art project. And you know what? Sometimes it's not going to come out delicious, but when you limit it, you're also limiting the waste, you
True.
know, and almost always things can be salvaged. So maybe you're saying, you know, work with these ingredients and keep them separate, and then let's bring them together. So you help with the bringing together process, and maybe you can kind of like corral the different ingredients in a way that you know will come together well. And then they see that, and then they're like, oh, that's really good. I'll do that again next time,
Hmm.
you
Well, and I
know?
mean, you mentioned a salad. I think that's a practical tip too. Like rather than mixing everything together in a cooked application, first, yeah, start with something like a salad. You can literally take one forkful and put on the 5 things they want to try, have them stick it in their mouth, and then if it's terrible, like there's no waste because you rearrange
Yeah,
it before
you
you assemble it.
I think you can do that, things like that in a blender too. You know, you
Mm.
can give them a few ingredients to work with to make something that goes into a blender. And blender food, whether it's a smoothie or soup or a sauce, can always be adjusted. So you can
True.
start with some things and then help them build and layer on. I think that's really, really important because as a chef, that's how you create a signature approach anyway. You use some tried and true, you know, uh, formulas, I guess you could say,
Yeah,
or
like a template.
recipes,
Yeah.
and then you build on that. And that's what makes it your own.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I think people are really going to enjoy your book and the fact that your recipes are focused on being like delicious and exciting and eating to thrive, not just eating to live. And you also have a program. We talked about resetting taste buds, and I'm like, I feel a little unsure what that means, but I think that's what your Eat to Thrive reset is going to help people do. Can you just quickly tell us about what that program would offer if people are interested?
Yeah. So, you know, eating to thrive, what I found during my time in my eating disorder is that I was so afraid of food.
Mm,
And I think we create a lot of fear because of the lexicon that circulates around of things being good or bad.
mm,
And so, being a perfectionist and somewhat of a type A personality, I never wanted to screw up. And so, part of my healing was really understanding true nutrition and what you need every day. And so the Eat to Thrive program does help you through a taste bud reset, which is in the book too, but it
mm.
helps to bring these concepts to life in a very actionable way.
Got it.
So you watch a video, you'll read text that supports that video, and then there are things that I want you to implement. And you know, we start very basic. We start with like, number one, go to your refrigerator and find the things that are on the no-fly list. And the reason they're on the no-fly list is because they're containing chemicals, they're containing unnatural additives, things that don't serve your body ever. It's not
Mm.
about foods being good or bad. It's about ingredients that don't build you up.
They're not even foods, these
They're not
ingredients,
even
really.
food. Yeah.
It's not a
So
fair fight.
we start there, and then every week, and you could get through the program a lot. I have somebody that I'm coaching right now who literally, like, over the weekend got through the first 3 lessons, and she's like, what's next? What's next?
Aw.
She wants to just get through it. But the whole point is to be able to implement
Yes.
and make eating to thrive a lifestyle, because it is a mental shift.
Mm.
Instead of just like, what are we going to make today that's delicious? We start with, what are we going to do to feed our bodies? Because we need amino acids to thrive. We need certain amount of fat. We need obviously we need the protein for the amino acids, and we want all that color for the phytonutrients that will help to feed our body to the core. So we start there and then build delicious meals from there. So it's that lifestyle shift helps you in your everyday.
Nice. So I like that. Yeah, you can kind of DIY it with the book if you like a little more hand holding. Mareya's coached thousands of clients, and so this course or program is like a way for you to really move through, really implement, and get a little access and Q&A calls and stuff with you, because man, sometimes you get a question and a book just doesn't quite cut it. So I love that you have that personal approach and that personal interaction with your students.
Yeah, I think that is really important. And, you know, in the programs that I've done where it's been in a group setting where you have at least a few people together, people are so much more effective in reaching their goals. And those goals have to be on your dashboard from day one. I talk about BHAGs in the book a lot. People are like, what does that really have to do with nutrition? Well, you got to know where you're going. You got to have a roadmap. And I want to make
big, hairy, awesome goal.
Yeah. And knowing what your goal is will help you, you know, stay on course. And I like to help people adjust what their goals are. Some people have really unrealistic goals, you know, and it's not about just weight loss. It's about like, are you strong in your body? Are you mentally, you know, there? Are you making good decisions? Are you there for your family? You know, sometimes people get really, really so hard on themselves. And so being in a group where you have people that can support you, and also somebody that can help you, not be your cheerleader only, but be your coach and help you correct along the way, can make a huge difference.
Very cool. So yeah, you're doing for moms and dads what we do for the kids at Kids Cook Real Food, creating that community and that support system. Thank you so much for being with us today, Mareya Ibrahim, author of Eat Like You Give a Fork, founder of the Eat Cleaner line of produce wash, and the Eat to Thrive program, among other things. But thanks again for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thanks, Katie.
You bet. Everyone, we will be back next week with another episode of the Healthy Parenting Connector, connecting you guys who just want to raise healthy kids with the experts and the information that you need.